Hello, and welcome to Lesson 14 of Speed Puzzling 101 Tips and Tricks. Quick speed puzzling lessons in under 10 minutes. Today's lesson is on managing table space at the start of an individual competition. As a disclaimer, there is no single correct way to do a puzzle. My advice may work for some, and it may not work for others. I encourage you to try as many different approaches as possible and see what works for you. When it comes to in-person speed puzzling events, you will always be restricted by the amount of space you have on the table that's provided to you. From the very start, when you are flipping over those pieces at the beginning, you need to be thinking about your next step, which is where you're going to be assembling the puzzle. So before each competition, you need to do two things. First, you need to find out what puzzle brand is being used. This is information that's released for pretty much every in-person competition, especially the big ones, so there shouldn't be any issue finding out that information. And the second thing you want to do is find out the size of table that you're going to be allocated. This should be in the rules when you sign up for any in-person competition, and if it's not, I encourage you to reach out to whoever the organizer is to find out what table size you will be given. In some cases, the table dimensions may change depending on various reasons. If it's far enough in advance and you're notified, it should be fine. A standard puzzle table is most often rectangular. The dimensions of the full table are usually about 72 inches by 30-ish inches or 6 feet by 2.5 feet. It's also something in centimeters, but let's move on. I actually purchased a table with those dimensions specifically for practicing purposes, and it did make a difference in my competition preparation as well as my performance at in-person competitions. However, even though you may have a full table, the vast majority of in-person competitions you will be assigned half of the table size. So that is about 3 feet by 2.5 feet. Again, the table that I have to practice on makes it easy to work within these dimensions and prepare for competitions. If you do not have a table that matches those exact dimensions, which is understandable, you want to utilize whatever space you do have. Measure out the dimensions on the table you do have to match whatever the competition is going to be, or as close as you can possibly get to them. This is the only way that you'll be able to accurately practice your space management for when competition time comes. And this lesson is about space management. So what does that mean? It means utilizing all the area that you are given and maximizing what you can do with it regardless of how limited the space is. I'll go through a few examples demonstrating how much space different types of puzzles can take up, whether it's a standard Ravensburger 500-piece puzzle or if it's a large piece puzzle, a circle puzzle, random cut. Each one uses slightly different amounts of space on the table. For each example, I will be working under the assumption that you will only have half a table to work with. In some competitions, you may be given a full table. If so, great, you have so much more space to work with. Space management is still an issue with that, but because most competitions you are given half a table, that will be the focus in today's lesson. And finally, before I go into the examples, you do want to practice this as often as possible, especially if you know you're going into a competition that has large puzzle pieces. This space management is much more challenging with that. However, even if you're going into a competition where you're working with a smaller puzzle, like a standard 500-piece Ravensburger, you still want to be working on how to manage that space that best suits your approach to puzzling. Example 1, the standard Ravensburger landscape. In the very first Speed Puzzling 101 lesson, I went over basic piece flipping. In that video, I described how to spread out the pieces to give yourself room to work. In that video, I showed the upside down U shape, which leaves space in the middle of the table. You can also choose to do a somewhat looking 7 shape, where you are leaving space in just one corner. There are long-term benefits to each, but for both you will have enough space to assemble the entire border with nothing in the middle of the puzzle. Example 2, the Ravensburger portrait. This throws off a lot of people. Even though the dimensions of the puzzle are the same as the landscape, just rotated 90 degrees, it seems larger. In this case, avoid flipping pieces on both sides of the table. Try to keep them all to the left or the right and leave room for your border to be built on one of the sides. It's more awkward as we don't see many of these, but be prepared for them. You'll see that even though it is a portrait puzzle, all the pieces still fit. The more pieces that fit, the better, because you may have noticed that I have not mentioned using trays yet. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Example number 3. Similar puzzle sizes but from other brands. If you know the brand in advance, you can look up the dimensions of their 500-piece puzzles. So even if you don't own that brand, you can prepare. For example, brands that are somewhat similar to Ravensburger dimensions include Hobbry, Buebird, Holiyay, and a few others. If the dimensions are within a half an inch or a centimeter or two, you'll be fine. Example number 4, circle puzzles. These can be tricky as they are larger pieces but also have smaller pieces. There's a weird combination that is happening here. With circle puzzles, in a lot of cases, you are not going to be building the edge first, but you will still want to put those pieces off to the side. Depending on the type of circle puzzle it is, you might build from the middle out. As I've shown in a different video, you may build section by section. Either way, you'll build the edge mostly as you work your way through the puzzle. You can, however, there is room to build, with a Ravensburger puzzle at least, there is room to build the entire circle edge and still work within the middle of it. It will be tough to have enough space, but it does work specifically for the Ravensburger puzzles. The larger the pieces get, the more challenging it is. An example would be the Eeboo brand, where the pieces are a little bit larger than Ravensburger, so you may not have as much room to work. So just be very cautious of where you start working at the puzzle. The more you can get assembled quickly, the easier it will be to manage the space. Example number 5, ribbon cut large piece puzzles. Now things start to get even trickier. Large piece puzzles are common for some brands, especially when it comes to 500 pieces. Large piece puzzles are not ideal for speed puzzling, but they will continue to make an appearance in competitions. In an ideal situation, if you do have a large piece puzzle, it's a ribbon cut. Some examples of these brands may include Ravensburger or Eurographics. True random cuts just seem to take up more room, and shape sorting is nearly impossible, so there are benefits to a standard ribbon cut large piece puzzle. No matter what, you do want to try to sort out the edge. We still want to build it, but maybe not at the start, simply due to space. You'll see in the example how much the border itself takes up just within the space that you are given. So you have to try to figure out how to utilize all the space. You have multiple options here. First, you can still do a standard flip, but almost all your workable space is gone. You may want to overlap a few pieces at the start. That's up to you. Some people don't mind it. It's not my preference. And then another option is to utilize a tray or two. The main issue here is that you are going to have pieces everywhere. So my advice is to sort out smaller projects onto the trays. You can assemble small projects on here and place them onto the table when they're done. But if you can get enough pieces sorted out onto a couple trays, that frees up more space for you to build the edge on the table or even work on small projects directly on the table. So some pieces you put onto the trays may be pieces that you know you won't need to deal with for an extended period of time. You want to be extra careful about pieces being knocked on the floor. Keep the trays away from the edge of the table and the person beside you. This is kind of a juggling act. Whatever you do, practice this approach a number of times before a competition. Absolutely do not go into a competition never trying any approaches. If you do, go with whatever is easiest. That probably means avoiding trays. Just to make it obvious as well, when you are on how much space you need for the border, this is what it looks like. Example number 6, large sized and full random cut. This is essentially the doomsday scenario, but it can happen. The puzzle in this example is from the 2024 Western Canadian Regionals, a Cobble Hill complete random cut puzzle. Not only is it a challenge to get every edge piece sorted out, but you are using the maximum amount of space available and then some. On the plus side, you can get every piece on the table. There will be some overlap. The downside is that you will have very little space to work with. My advice here is to skip the edge for now. Go straight into small projects instead. As the pieces are assembled, they will take up less space. Of course, we have no idea what the difficulty level of the puzzle will be, but you need to do your best with the image. No matter what, there will always be little projects to work on. Regardless of the puzzle brand, space management from the very start of the competition is imperative for your success. The number one thing you can do is practice with that brand in advance and practice within the dimensions that will be available to you in the competition. Before I purchased my current puzzling table, I would outline the dimensions with painter's tape on my previous table, so I would still have the boundaries to work within. If you want to make sure that you're not going outside of those boundaries without you knowing, place some extra puzzle boxes around the edge so the pieces can't be pushed beyond the tape boundary. The larger the puzzle pieces, the more challenging space management is going to be. It might be easier in terms of handling pieces, seeing the image. There are benefits to large piece puzzles, but space management is the number one negative side when it comes to having to complete a large piece puzzle. It is something that must be practiced in advance, and if you're using trays, make sure to practice with them as well. The final thing to remember is if you are getting a large piece puzzle in a competition, yes, there's going to be challenges with it, but those are going to apply to everybody else. If you notice you're the only one with a large piece puzzle, then something's gone wrong. That is it for lesson 14 of Speed Puzzling 101 tips and tricks. Click like if you enjoyed the video and leave a comment below if you have a question or a suggestion for a future video. And make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the content that is released on here. Coming up next week is episode 8 of Puzzled and Chatty, where I sit down with my first person who is not located within Canada. There will also be a return of some other videos that have been on a bit of a hiatus, including my puzzle story, as well as some other interesting topics and videos coming up. I will see you next week for another lesson. Until then, class dismissed, and as always, happy puzzling. Bye.